They traveled on private planes, they did the world. It was a lifestyle that anybody would dream about.
Coming up on Crime Files.
A millionaire playboy.
Ben had everything at his beck and call his whole life. Nobody said no to Ben Novack.
His trophy wife, the former stripper.
She was a beautiful woman. Blonde hair, beautiful figure, exotic.
Their bizarre and twisted sex life.
They were sexually into all kinds of stuff, bondage. He was into amputee sex.
This is the story of a tumultuous marriage that ended with not one, but 2 murders.
They must have been doing high fives to each other, saying, look, this is a piece of cake.
It's a story about enormous wealth and deadly greed.
Money is always a motive for murder.
And one woman's diabolical plan to inherit her husband's millions.
I'll tell you what, wouldn't want to be in a dark alley with her. She'd slit your throat if she thought she had to.
Crime Files starts now.
It's a picturesque suburban village with white picket fences, well-manicured lawns, and quiet neighbors.
Rybrook is a beautiful, small, close-knit community.
But on a steamy summer morning in July 2009, the charming bedroom community just north of New York City was shaken to its core.
I can't believe that murder comes to Westchester like this.
It was a Sunday. I got a call from work. There had been a homicide at the Hilton.
When the detectives arrived, they found Florida hotel heir Ben Novack Jr. bound, tortured, and beaten to a pulp inside Suite 453 at the elegant Rye-Town Hilton.
They beat him so bad when they opened the chest cavity, his ribs looked like chicken bones broken into his organs.
It was a vicious, vicious attack. He was duct taped. Blood everywhere. It was very evident that this was somebody that not only wanted to kill Ben Novack, but wanted to make him suffer.
It was a far cry from what anyone expected when Novack, his wife Narcy, and stepdaughter May boarded a plane to New York from Florida 2 days earlier.
They were there to run a convention at the Rye-Town Hilton.
What was supposed to be a working weekend, organizing and managing an Amway conference, ended in a gruesome crime scene.
Horrible. Horrible. That nobody should die that way.
Novack's widow, Narcy, claimed to have made the discovery after an early morning breakfast, but a darker, a more sinister version of events would soon emerge.
There's no doubt that he was targeted. They didn't rob him. They didn't take anything.
Whoever came to that room came prepared. They came with weapons, they came with duct tape.
So you have to keep in mind, up until now, Rybrook was a really small village with only 3 murders in its entire history. And now suddenly, it had a murder mystery on its hands with 2,000 guests, all of them potential suspects, all needing to be questioned.
The Rybrook Hilton was packed. There was a lot of interviews to be conducted.
They were getting antsy to leave. Well, it's a homicide investigation. You know, we're trying to prevent as many people as we can so that we can interview them.
Top officials say no one has now been ruled out, but they are looking into the background of the couple.
I remember thinking at the time it seemed so darkly ironic that this hotel heir would lose his life at the Rye-Town Hilton, considering it's 1,300 miles away from the place where his own mysterious life began in his father's luxury Miami Fontainebleau hotel. It's a place where everyone from the Rat Pack to the Beatles slept.
The Fontainebleau in its heyday was the playground for all the rich and famous. Frank Sinatra, Sammy Davis Jr., they were all close personal friends of Ben Novack's family.
But there's only one man on the planet who could boast spending his entire childhood within the walls of the Fontainebleau Hotel, Ben Novack Jr., whose own parents founded the legendary celebrity play den.
Ben's childhood was sad. He didn't play with other children. His birthdays were staff singing happy birthday to him with a lonely cake. He lived in the penthouse of the Fontainebleau and was taken to school in limousines.
It was certainly a tumultuous life right up until July 12, 2009, when Ben Novack Jr. was sadly discovered by his wife Narcy so far away from home here in Westchester County.
When she walked in, she said she started screaming, yelling, and then she just ran out into the hallway and started banging on doors.
When I interviewed her, she first told me, I thought maybe he had a heart attack.
It's clear that after Ben's death, she was in a state of shock.
Unlike her husband, Narcy Novack led a life that was light years away from the glitz and glamour of Westchester County and Miami Beach. Narcy was born in Ecuador, in the western coast of South America. It was a tough life that eventually led her to South Florida, where she made the decision to take her clothes off and dance for money as a way to support herself and her only child, her daughter May.
May had said that our mother was extremely difficult, not very nice to her. Didn't treat her well.
She wasn't the loving mother that would hold you and read your stories.
By the mid-'80s, Narcy was peddling her flesh at the seedy strip club Follies International in Hialeah, Florida.
Ben Novack was somebody that frequented places like that. He loved his strip clubs, he loved his exotic dances. He would be there sometimes every night.
One thing was for sure, the day Ben Novack Jr. walked into the club was the day Narcy walked out. The two eventually got married in 1991.
From what I had gathered, they had a decent relationship in the beginning, but I think as the relationship went on, things got on shakier ground.
The couple's union was frequently marred by kinky sex and Ben's bizarre fetish for amputee pornography.
He would actually make people that he would have romantic relationships with tie back some of their limbs, so it would be that he was having sex with an amputee. He made Narcy play in this game playing, which she states later on that she found repulsive.
There were drag-out fights.
They would love hard and they would fight hard. Narcy would punish Ben. She would tie him up, she would hold back sex. She reports that she was going in for a nose job to fix her nose. And when she woke up from her nose job, instead of having a new nose, she had extremely large breasts that she never consented to.
So at one point, the relationship comes to an explosive head with an unbelievable home invasion orchestrated by Narcy herself.
Basically, she got a couple of cohorts and had them break into the house, tie him up to a chair, smack him around.
We learned that Narcy took over $300,000. He was never arrested because Narcy was blackmailing Ben about his fetishes.
But it was Ben's penchant for other women, particularly a porn star, Rebecca Bliss, that really set the marriage into freefall.
She was absolutely threatened by Rebecca Bliss.
She was a street-level lady of the night, soliciting guys on Craigslist. That's how they met.
Narcy had learned that he was spending thousands and thousands of dollars on Rebecca Bliss. He had put her up in an apartment. He had furnished it. He had paid for surgeries for her. Ben was really smitten with her.
And that was all just driving her crazy. Because here's your husband seeing this porn star. I guess it got to her.
If Ben's relationship with Rebecca Bliss didn't get under Narcy's skin enough, there was definitely something else that did. His obsession with Batman memorabilia. I even spotted a real life-size Batmobile in their garage of their swanky Fort Lauderdale mansion.
It was really incredible, his collection. I was told it was $5-6 million collection.
If you take into consideration Ben's tawdry sex life, his Batman collection worth millions, his convention business, the hard-nosed businessman begins to look like a prime target for murder.
Ben Novack had a lot of enemies. He was a very colorful character.
Did he make enemies? Yeah, he stepped on a few toes along the way.
He was not very well liked. He was the type of guy, if you owe me $1, I want that dollar.
Coming up.
You have to ask yourself, who would have wanted Ben Novack Jr. dead? Who had a motive? Well, suddenly, all eyes were on Narcy.
Narcy's plan was to take over the family business, take over all the wealth.
Plus,
investigators take a closer look at the death of Ben Novack's mother just months prior to his own.
You have a mother and a son killed within 3 months apart of each other. Somebody is after this family.
when deadly greed, the Ben Novack Jr. murder continues. Crime Files continues now with Deadly Greed, the Ben Novack Jr. murder.
It was an Amway convention that brought Ben Novack Jr. to the Rye-town Hilton in the days before his murder. Ever the perfectionist, he spent his last night on Earth making sure every detail was in place.
He was a perfectionist, and if his name was on it, he wanted to make sure it was perfect.
Ben was actually caught on surveillance video before he turned in around 6 in the morning, and so were the two men hired to kill him. Detectives say within minutes, strangers were in his room and pounced on Novack as he slept in his underwear.
He was beaten to death, hogtied, blood all over the place.
I walked in and I tripped on something. I realized that he was on the floor. Something was not right.
Ben's widow, Narcy, during a marathon 9-hour-long interrogation, gave her version of events of what she says she found after she returned from breakfast.
I asked Narcy straight out.
Did you have any involvement in your husband's death?
She was extremely calm, not really crying. I never saw Narcy cry.
She was very blasé about things.
Isn't that a little presumptuous? People react differently. There are many instances where people become stoic, so I don't put too much stock in that criticism.
Eventually, the detectives asked Narcy to take a lie detector test.
5 times we gave her the lie detector, and she failed it 5 times.
What about her failing multiple lie detector tests?
I'm not going to comment on that.
Ben's untimely death would also force detectives down in Florida to take another look at the circumstances surrounding the tragic death of his mother, Bernice, who died 3 months before her son did.
On April 6, 2009, the Miami Beach socialite's frail, bloodied body was found sprawled out in the utility room of her Fort Lauderdale home.
It was just a crazy scene, very bloody.
Her skull bashed in, her jaw shattered, and one of her fingers broken.
They ruled it accidental. And I called them and I said, we think you might have a homicide on your hands.
It was apparent that it was a homicide. There was blood spatter throughout her car. There was blood throughout her house. It was a vicious, vicious attack.
So it turns out that Ben's mother, Bernice, was the designated executor of her son's estate in the event of his untimely death. So much for Narcy inheriting his millions.
Narcy could not stand her. She hated Ben's mother. They never got along. She told Narcy that you'll always be a pole dancer to me.
Once we found out that his wealth would transfer to his mom, that was like the bells and whistles went off. There you go. There's your motive right there.
And let's not forget about Ben's extramarital relationship with Rebecca Bliss, because the detectives say it certainly played a role in Narcy's motive.
I think he was planning to leave Narcy, and she knew it. She would definitely be losing millions if Ben was to divorce her.
Was Narcy afraid that Ben was going to leave her for the porn star Rebecca Bliss?
I can't talk to you about what my client's thoughts were. I can tell you that that was certainly not a motive for her to kill Ben Novack.
In July 2010, just 3 days shy of the year anniversary of her husband's death, Narcy is arrested for not only the murder of her husband, but his mother Bernice as well.
The police and the prosecutors working together uncovered what was nothing short of a diabolical plan by a woman who was intent on eliminating her husband and taking his family fortune for her own.
Narcy definitely didn't have the ability to pull off a homicide like this by herself, so she enlisted the help of family.
Detectives say she turned to her brother, Cristobal Veliz, who then in turn hired a hitman, Alejandro Garcia, who was a known criminal with a drug and alcohol problem, who was first contracted to kill Ben's mother, Bernice.
They must have been doing high fives to each other, saying, look, this is a piece of cake. We got away with this down in Fort Lauderdale. This little small town up in New York should be a real cakewalk.
When it came to Ben himself, detectives say Garcia brought in an accomplice to help get the job done, a hot dog vendor by the name of Joel Gonzalez.
They actually come to the Rye-town Hilton days before the homicide to find out the ins and outs of the hotel, to find out what's the best way to get in and out of the hotel without being seen.
The morning of, They said that when they got to the suite, Narcy was there with the door cracked. They go in, close the door, they go on each side of the bed, they look at each other, they count to 3, and then they just start hitting him.
Ben woke up and started fighting for his life, started screaming for help.
And she's in the doorway watching this whole thing go on.
And Narcy walks into the room, and to muffle his sound, she hands one of them a pillow and said, to keep him quiet.
But the detectives say the most barbaric act of all came at the behest of Narcy herself.
She says to Alejandro, wait, get back in there. Cut his eyes out.
Crime Files continues once again with Deadly Greed, the Ben Novack Jr. murder.
I'm 1,000% innocent.
Calling collect from a payphone inside the Westchester County Jail, Narcy Novack was determined to make her case to me.
What they doing on the name of justice is wrong.
The former stripper turned trophy wife turned murder suspect laid out her thoughts on the murder of her hotelier husband, Ben Novack Jr.
I've been framed. By who? I'm not sure.
She spoke of outlandish claims of police brutality.
They treat me brutal. Spit on my face.
All words of a seemingly desperate woman accused of a despicable crime facing life in prison.
I don't want my suffering to go unnoticed. I don't want another human being to go through what I'm going through.
And when it came to those claims, it was Narcy who let in her husband's attackers, handed over a pillow to muffle his screams, and even ordered one of them to gouge out his eyes.
I have never met the guy, and I can swear to you, and it's everything that's the Bible.
Narcy had no problems pointing fingers at her only child, May Abad, who has publicly accused her mother of staging the brutal murder.
I would say she's very disturbed. I hope she gets the help.
Right away, Narcy and her brother, Cristobal, started pointing the finger at May, saying that May was having an affair with Alejandro. May hired Alejandro to do these homicides.
There were any number of people that could have been involved in Ben Novack's death. The problem with the investigation was those avenues were never explored.
The truth will come out.
With a colorful cast of characters straight out of a Fellini movie, a jury of 8 men and 4 women were tasked with sorting through the secrets, lies, and salacious details of Ben Novack Jr.'s life and death in one of the most high-profile trials to ever hit Westchester County.
It's not very often that you get to cross-examine a porn star, a one-eyed assassin.
But in the end,
you heard the verdict first here on News 12 this afternoon.
Those jurors found Narcy and her brother Cristobal guilty of 14 out of the 15 charges filed against them, including hiring the hitmen that killed Ben and his elderly mother, Bernice.
We looked over the charges and we looked over the indictment, and I think we dealt with the law fairly.
Were you surprised by the jury's verdict?
The government put together a very detailed case. And with a case of this magnitude, the way she was portrayed in the press prior to the case, I was not surprised.
She just thought that she could do whatever she wanted without any kind of consequences at all. And the trial, I think, showed how vicious she could be.
Wouldn't want to be in a dark alley with her. She'd slit your throat if she thought she had to.
She could have had the best life, Narcy Novack, and she gave it all up for greed. It's disgusting.